Ever notice how the very things that make you a super attentive and attuned partner sometimes are also the very same things that your partner gets annoyed by and are the same things that keep you stuck in anxiety? Like how being really good at reading people can turn into overthinking every little change in their tone. Or how being deeply caring about your relationship can sometimes push people away instead of bringing them closer. Today, we'll discuss 5 anxious preoccupied patterns that might feel really familiar but can be a double-edged sword. We'll also talk about how sometimes the anxious preoccupied superpowers can backfire on us. Hi, I'm Katya Morozova, attachment coach and certified NARM practitioner. On this channel, we explore attachment dynamics in relationships so that we can understand ourselves and each other and have the love that we want. If that sounds helpful to you, then definitely hit subscribe. All right, let's go ahead and dive right into pattern number 1. First, let's talk about what I call the feelings flip-flop. You know what's really interesting about anxious attachment? They're actually really good at identifying emotions, but sometimes we take an unexpected detour in how we communicate those emotions. So here's what happens. Instead of saying, I feel scared when you don't text back for hours, or I feel hurt when plans change last minute, we might say things like, you always ignore my texts, or you're so inconsiderate with my time. See the flip there? Instead of expressing our own vulnerable feelings, we're pointing fingers at what the other person is doing wrong. It's like we're taking a detour around our own feelings and going straight to criticizing their actions. It's totally understandable why we do this. Sometimes it feels safer to focus on the other person than to admit we're feeling vulnerable or scared. But here's the thing. When we do this feeling flip-flop, the other person usually ends up feeling attacked or becoming defensive, and our real feelings never actually get heard. The irony is we're trying so hard to connect, but this communication detour often pushes people away instead. The good news is once you spot your own emotional flip-flop, you can redirect yourself back to expressing your actual feelings instead of being the feelings detective for everyone else. You get to be the spokesperson for your own truth. Pattern number 2 is the authority override. I know it sounds official. You know that moment when you know something, you know it in your gut, but then someone speaks with a bit more authority and suddenly, poof, it's like your mind goes blank and your own wisdom goes right out the window. So here's what's fascinating about anxious attachment. We often have incredible intuition and deep wisdom about situations, but we have this habit of putting our own inner knowing on mute the moment that someone else enters the chat. It's like we're carrying around this pretty cool internal GPS system, but we keep turning it off to follow someone else's directions. Let me give you an example. So maybe you're feeling that something isn't right in a situation, but because someone else seems more confident or speaks more authoritatively, you think, well, they must know better than me. Even when your body is screaming that something feels off, you might override that wisdom because you don't trust your own voice. And here's where it gets really interesting. This pattern can keep us stuck in situations and relationships that don't serve us. We might stay in relationships where we are not being treated well or accept behavior that doesn't feel right, all because we're waiting for someone else to validate what we already know deep down. When you start treating your own voice as an authority figure, everything starts to shift. Your inner GPS was installed for a reason. It was installed to protect you and to guide you on your path. Pattern number 3, mind reading. So you're probably really good at reading people's faces and body language. In fact, you might pride yourself on being able to tell exactly what someone's thinking or feeling. But here's the thing, this superpower might actually be working against you, and here's why. When you have an anxious attachment style, you don't just read people, you actually tend to overread them. You make assumptions about what they're thinking or feeling without actually verifying if you're right. A lot of times people with anxious attachment can be not just looking at someone and connecting with them, but can actually be scanning a person's face for what it is that they're feeling so that they can feel okay themselves. This is not actually reading people. This is a form of hypervigilance about what they're thinking or feeling without actually verifying if you're right. This is what I call the mind reading trap. Let me give you an example. So your partner seems a bit distant during dinner, and instead of asking, "Hey, you seem quiet tonight, everything okay?" you might jump to the conclusion that they're losing interest or that they're probably thinking about breaking up. You may even feel a dead right kind of certainty. So the solution is we need to learn how to verify rather than assume. I know it feels scary to ask, but it's the only way to break free from the anxiety spiral of assumptions. Here's the great thing about asking is when you ask, you're gonna really get to know someone, especially if you're in an early stage relationship. How people react or respond to when you kind of pry into their internal experience or verify what you're feeling is going to go a long way. Because some people might be complimented that you want to know what they're feeling and where they're at, while others might get defensive and shut down. And that's going to be really good information for you about this person. Pattern number 4, getting stuck in life's waiting room. So something fascinating happens with anxious attachment. We become masters at reading others, but often get stuck in life's waiting room. Think about it. This pattern usually starts as a childhood survival mechanism. You become incredibly skilled at reading and responding to others because it helped you navigate uncertain environments. You learned that waiting for attunement got at least some of your needs met. But when this carries into adulthood, it shows up as this constant state of waiting. We wait for that text before making plans, waiting for someone else to take the lead, waiting for external validation to feel good about yourself or to feel worthy, second guessing your own exploratory impulses to explore the world around you or tackle something that's important to you, or putting your desires on hold until someone else approves them. The science behind this is clear. Secure attachment requires a balance between connection and exploration. But people with anxious attachment often develop such a strong connection muscle that their exploration muscle stays dormant. The key to shifting this pattern isn't about losing your attunement to others. You're never going to lose that. It's about developing equal attunement to yourself. This means learning to recognize and trust your own signals, impulses, and desires with the same expertise that you bring to reading others. The resentment snowball. This 5th pattern is really important to understand, and especially if you want lasting relationships and value clear communication. You know that feeling when something seemingly insignificant bothers you, but you think to yourself, well, everything else is great. Why make a big fuss about this? But here's what happens. Those small things that you brush away, they don't actually go away. They pile up. They are little moments of repressed frustration. And eventually, like a snowball rolling down a hill, they grow into something much bigger. That much bigger thing is called resentment. This resentment typically shows up in one of 2 ways. One, passive aggressive behavior, or the silent snowball. Or two, sudden emotional outbursts, which is the snowball avalanche. Here's where resentment can be your friend. It's actually your body's way of telling you where you need to set boundaries. Those little moments of frustration, they're actually important signals trying to guide you. The way through this isn't to wait for that snowball to get bigger. It's learning to be brave and advocate for ourselves in those seemingly insignificant moments. Each time you speak up, you're not just preventing resentment, you're building your boundary setting muscle. And you're preventing those uncomfortable situations where your partner feels betrayed because they had no idea that you felt this way. Do you relate to any of these 5 patterns? Let me know which one in the comments. I'd love to know. Now, if you've started to gain awareness on some of these patterns and you'd like support in transforming these patterns into secure attachment, and if your end goal is to feel confident in your relationships and have secure and lasting love, then I recommend exploring one-on-one coaching. You can book a coaching session on my website or fill out the application form if you'd like to explore long-term coaching. That application is going to be in the description or in the pinned comment below. So many of my clients not only become secure through our work together, but end up finding loving partners during our time together and have secure functioning relationships. My client Mark started working with me after he got out of a dead-end relationship. He wanted a relationship that both felt secure and had passion. He met his now girlfriend a couple of months into our work. And what she really appreciates is when he communicates directly, which is something that he practiced in our coaching. And we looked at what got in the way of him doing that. And even though his partner actually has to go out into the field for work with no reception, he doesn't get anxious because he knows he can rely on her to always return. Another client, Jenny, started working with me, and together we helped her detach from a partner that was emotionally unavailable and avoidant and really was never going to give her the secure love that she really wanted. Shortly after, she started dating her boyfriend, who is consistent, attentive, and who never keeps her guessing where they stand. Check out my next video. It's going to be right up here. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.